grand scheme of Doctor Who, the show has notoriously had inconsistent quality throughout its 50+ years. For every The Caves of Androzani, you get a follow-up like The Twin Dilemma. As with any show whose history is so long, there are plenty of opinions flying around regarding which episodes are the best and which are the worst. In general, I'm in broad agreement with much of the Doctor Who community. For example, my all-time favourite story is the most cliched answer possible, The Caves of Androzani. Originally I wanted to do a list of the most overrated stories of the show. Listen. But then I realised I'd rather do a more positive video. So here's my list of the top 20 stories that I'd like to talk about because I feel they don't get enough love by the fan community. To determine this list, I use 3 criteria: the IMDb user ratings of all the episodes, the opinions I tend to hear in the fan community, and the 2014 Doctor Who magazine fan-voted list of every single story ranked. A few months ago I myself ranked every story from best to worst, and by comparing these rankings I could tell which stories I liked significantly more than most fans. Here are some honourable mentions of stories that didn't quite make the 20 most underrated. The following are all stories liked by me, but ranked 100th or lower on the 2014 list: The Reign of Terror, The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, The Claws of Axos, The Face of Evil, The Leisure Hive, 4 to Doomsday, Frontios, Attack of the Cybermen, The Mark of the Rani, The Trial of a Time Lord, The Happiness Patrol, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, Rise of the Cybermen, Smith and Jones, Voyage of the Damned, The Sontaran Stratagem, Planet of the Dead, Amy's Choice, The Bells of St. John, and Hyde. From this point on, it is worth mentioning that my entries for each story may contain spoilers, so consider this your spoiler warning. To keep this video a reasonable length, I'll just briefly run down my numbers 20 to 11 and then discuss 10 to 1 in much greater detail. At number 20 we have the season 15 finale, The Invasion of Time. It's one of the better Gallifrey stories of the classic series and has some neat twists and lots of mystery. It's flawed, but I rated it over 100 places higher than the fans did in the 2014 list.
Where are the others?
In the bathroom.
The bathroom?
Yes, in the bathroom.
You got lost, didn't you?
Well, it's bigger than it looks, your TARDIS.
Hannah, the mighty Hunter Scotland. Don't you think she got lost?
How do you know?
I think you got lost.
Listen, Doctor,
Come
you
on,
gave me the wrong
you got
directions.
lost.
How could you possibly expect me to follow those directions?
You got lost!
At 19, I put Hartnell's The Edge of Destruction, which is essentially a character piece with our main cast stuck in the TARDIS for 2 episodes. But it's interesting, suspenseful and character focused, so it's probably amongst my personal top 100 stories.
Telling us that the only people inside are ourselves.
Precisely. I know now who's responsible. You are. You sabotaged my ship.
What are you talking about?
You're the cause of this disaster.
At 18 is The Crusade, a Hartnell story with no aliens, just history. I think this is a story with almost no flaws, even if it doesn't appeal to me in loads of ways. I'd say it's amongst Hartnell's top 5 stories, as it's well paced with a good story and decent side characters.
Of course. Did you hear what that man called? Called him? Saracen. Malik Wick. Yes, that was the name the Saracens had for King Richard Coeur de Lion. Malik Wick.
So we're in the Holy Land?
At 17 is Terminus, starring Peter Davison, and my favourite story of the Black Guardian trilogy. I placed this over 130 places higher than the 2014 fan list, and I like it because its bleakness and concept both appeal to me. I also love that Nyssa, perhaps the 5th Doctor's best companion, is given loads more to do than usual, and this story gives her a good send-off.
We do fully understand the commitment you'll be undertaking,
Yes.
and that life here will be very hard.
I am fully aware of that, but I want to stay.
And you're a very brave person. I wish you every luck.
She'll die here. Not easily, Tegan. Like you, I'm indestructible.
At 16 is The Seeds of Death, from Patrick Troughton's final season, because it remains one of the Second Doctor's greatest base under siege stories, and also manages to expand the Ice Warriors whilst being tense and claustrophobic. I really don't understand why this wasn't in the top half of the 2014 ranking.
What's gone wrong? I thought you said it was infallible. Well, the solar power source must have been damaged, JB. You said we'd have trouble if that didn't work. Yes, without the beam it'll be impossible to land safely. You mean we'll crash?
Well, either that or drift on endlessly through space.
Troughton again at 15 for Fury from the Deep, which is my all-time favourite incomplete story. To watch this, you'll need to find the reconstructions online, but it's worth it, as despite faults in its plotline, it has a good amount of twists and turns, and despite being already well acclaimed, I think it's underrated, because I would say it might be amongst my personal top 20 stories of all time. At 14, I've gone with The Ambassadors of Death, because it's the least acclaimed story of the brilliant Season 7, even though I think it's either as good as the other stories or only marginally worse. It's a tense story packed with twists and turns that is suspenseful and interesting, because for once, maybe the aliens aren't the villains. The first entry for the new series goes to the two-part story Aliens of London and World War III at 13. I like the simple story, which is well told, and the themes of responsibility and risk. It has a good dilemma shown between Rose and her family, and I genuinely don't get why this story is disliked.
Who exactly are the Slitheen?
They're aliens.
Yes, I got that, thanks.
Who are you, if not human?
Who's not human? He's not human. He's not human?
Can I have a bit of hush?
Sorry,
So, what's the plan?
but he's got a northern accent.
Lots of planets have a north.
I said hush.
At number 12 is David Tennant's 42, which I like because it prioritises simplicity and good storytelling over the ongoing narrative or pointless character development, and it has a brilliant scene where the Doctor is possessed by a son.
What do you mean? How can a son be alive? Why is he saying that?
Because it's living in me.
Oh my god.
Humans! You grab whatever's nearest and bleed it dry! Ah! You should have scared!
At 11 is The Creature from the Pit, starring Tom Baker in one of his most humour-filled stories. I have a lot of nostalgia for this story as I watched it a lot when I was younger, yet fans don't like it, having placed it outside the top 200 in the 2014 list. It's certainly not great, but it's a fun adventure with some good ideas, and certainly better than the majority of Season 17.
I am the Doctor. Friend. Friend.
Hello. I am the Doctor. Friend. Friend.
At number 10 is going to be perhaps my most controversial opinion, the recent two-part story Under the Lake and Before the Flood. I really liked this story and would maybe go as far as to say that it could be the best story so far of the 12th Doctor's run. The setup is simple, ghosts on an underwater base at some point in the future. This story ticks every box of what I like, a base under siege, time travel ideas, the Doctor saving the day in a clever fashion, and a bunch of likeable supporting characters.
They're ghosts. They're ghosts.
You said there was no such thing. You actually poo-pooed the ghost theory.
Yes, well, there was no such thing as socks or smartphones and badgers until there suddenly were.
I think this two-part story is cleverly set up, tense and engaging. I like how it begins, where it goes and how it ends. It all works out fine to me. I could argue why I like it, but in truth, I don't understand why people do not like it. It seems clearly superior to much of Series 9, like The Witch is Familiar, Sleep No More and Hellbent. I understand that I may just controversially love this story, as it contains loads of aspects that appeal to me, but I still think it's objectively much better than most of the episodes around it. Another controversial Capaldi pick at 9, In the Forest of the Night. This is one of the most hated Doctor Who episodes of the entire new series, judging by the way the community reacted to it online, but I think it's okay. Not great, but perfectly fine. The story of trees popping up all over Earth to protect all of mankind from a solar flare is a bit simplistic and ultimately stupid, but I found the entire episode to be filled with a poetic mysticism and just good goofy fun.
They don't like it when you're holding them. They want you to let them go.
Who are they?
We are here always since the beginning and until the end.
When I first saw this episode, it was a Sunday morning after it was broadcast, and I was hungover, and this episode just brought me 45 minutes of joy. It lifted my spirits. When Series 8 finished its original run, I remember thinking that In the Forest of the Night was my favourite episode of the series, although that has most definitely changed upon subsequent rewatches. I don't think this is a great story, but it's a risky, non-villain story with plenty of flaws, and when episodes like Listen get praised for being different, I don't understand why this one doesn't. It's definitely deserving of a re-evaluation. Number 8 goes to The Vampires of Venice from Matt Smith's first series as the Doctor. This is another one of those stories I assumed everybody just agreed was good, but apparently not, with the 2014 list placing it as low as number 167 whilst I put it in my top 60. The plot concerns fish-like aliens acting as vampires in medieval Venice, which the Doctor takes Amy and Rory to in order to help them sort out their relationship troubles.
Just as well I brought this then. Ultraviolet portable sunlight.
Yours is bigger than mine.
Let's not go there.
I don't really know what to say about this episode, except that the whole reason why there are vampires in the episode is quite clever, and the whole story zips along just fine, with no major flaws and good character moments for the Doctor, Amy and Rory. The Vampires of Venice is one of the most purely fun episodes of Matt Smith's tenure, and one of my favourite 11th Doctor stories, and one that I frequently rewatch just for the enjoyment factor. This entry will be a double whammy of both Kinder at 7 and Snake Dance at 6. These stories are both decently acclaimed, but I think they should be loved so much more. In my opinion, both of these stories are amongst the very best of the series, and probably amongst my personal top 20. The main plots of both involve the sinister Mara, which possessed the 5th Doctor's companion Tegan.
Puzzling, isn't it? And by the way, one thing. You will agree to being me sooner or later, this side of madness or the other.
I will acknowledge that it took me a long time to love these stories. In particular, I first saw Kinder about 10 years ago, but it's only been in the last couple of years I've learnt to really respect it.
You have neither the power nor the right to arrest us.
You forget! I'm now in command! I have the power of life and death over all of you!
The reason why I love them is that they are different to most stories, and that the themes and ideas are metaphysical, dreamlike and unexplainable. They have a very spiritual influence, but they show us the way that Doctor Who can be more than just another sci-fi show. The fact that answers are not given and plot points and actions are unexplained by the characters is probably a reason why they are overlooked. But if one only gives them a fair chance and watches them a couple of times, I think you'll understand what's so great about them.
Doctor, no, what are you doing?
I'm afraid we have no choice. If we're to have any hope of saving Tegan.
His bite could be deadly.
Yes, I do know.
At number 5, I've gone for Matt Smith's The Rings of Akhaten. This episode receives a lot of hate, and I actually do not understand why, because I think it's actually a good story. Not just okay, but actively good. The plot is that the Doctor takes Clara for her first trip in the TARDIS, and they visit an alien planet where they worship some sort of god, which turns out to be the nearby sentient star.
I walked in universes where the laws of physics were devised by the mind of a madman. And I've watched universes freeze and creations burn. I have seen things you wouldn't believe. I have lost things you will never understand. And I know things, secrets that must never be told, knowledge that must never be spoken. Knowledge that will make parasite gods bliss. So come on then!
The key reason why I think this is a good episode is because it finally explores an alien world and culture. The classic series did this all the time, but the new series keeps almost all of the show earthbound. Not one single story from Russell T Davies' era is not about humans. The Rings of Akhaten comes along with a world that is fully alien and gives us insight into so much of this weird culture. I love the world building in this episode and the brilliant speech delivered by Matt Smith in the finale, although I concede that Clara's Leaf-related subplot is complete garbage and there is some cheesy moments. But I cannot fathom why it was voted in the bottom 10 of all time and the second worst in the new series in the 2014 list. Number 4 is one that I feel is much more underseen than underrated, but I'm going for The Sensorites, starring William Hartnell in his first season. When I first started watching Doctor Who, The Sensorites was one of the very first Hartnell stories that I ever saw, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. The story of a peaceful race of aliens trying to protect themselves from visiting humans is a fine plotline, and the story maximises this in the first 2 episodes. I genuinely found the first 2 episodes creepy and frightening as a child, and now as an adult I love them for the twists they provide and the ideas about Susan they give us, which is more than most of her stories in Doctor Who.
All we want you to do is to open the door.
No, I'll protect you.
But our friends are out there.
They're dead. All dead.
But we were just with them just a few minutes ago. What is it?
When we start to interact more with the actual Sensorites, the story falters, but never terribly so. My nostalgia has worn off, and I now don't see this as a masterpiece I once did. But it's certainly better than being voted in the bottom 20 of all time in the 2014 list. Matt Smith reappears once again on this list, as at number 3 I'm going for Series 5's The Hungry Earth and Cold Blood. As mentioned when discussing the Rings of Akhaten, I really like stories that take place outside of human civilization and actually explore another culture, even if most fans don't seem to. And I think Cold Blood and its exploration of the culture of the Homo reptilia is the first good example of this in the new series.
I'm the last of my species.
Really? No. Last of the species, the Klempari defense. As an interrogation defense, it's a bit old hat, I'm afraid.
I'm the last of my species.
No, you're really not. Because I'm the last of my species, and I know how it sits in a heart. So don't insult me.
The plotline of the Silurians returning after drilling in North Wales disrupts one of their colonies is simple and never gets convoluted. The exploration of the reptiles' culture is a great section, and the story holds up in both the ethical questions it asks and the characters it creates. Of all the episodes of new series Doctor Who, this is one of the most classic Who-like, and I respect it loads for that. I don't claim this episode is flawless, but I will say it's one of my absolute favourites of Matt Smith's tenure. At number 2 is Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks, from David Tennant's second series. This is numerically the most underrated story, as I rated it 146 places higher than the fans did. The basic premise is that in 1930s New York, the Daleks turn Dalek Sec into a Dalek-human hybrid and plan to create an army of human Daleks. I have never understood why this gets hate, as the main story is sound I think, and the 2-part story thrilling throughout.
Hello, surprise, boo, etc.
Doctor, the enemy of the Daleks, exterminate!
Wait! Well then, a new form of Dalek. Fascinating.
I was not aware of the evil of the Daleks when I first saw this episode, and the Dalek human idea seemed incredibly fresh and interesting to me. Even upon hindsight, I controversially think this story achieves its human Dalek idea perhaps even better than the much revered, but in my opinion overrated, The Evil of the Daleks. The way they explore the human Dalek conflict is well told by writer Helen Rayner, and I think it fits really well into the themes of Series 3. I seriously do not understand what is not to like about this episode. Although it most definitely is not perfect, in my controversial opinion, this story is significantly above average. At number 1, a much maligned story that is often seen as a product of its time, The Web Planet. I love the ideas at the heart of this story. A bunch of alien insects fight each other and the entire story is totally goofy. It has little logic and reason, but the sheer imagination is breathtaking. I love the Zarbi, the Menoptera, and the Animus, and all the ideas embedded into the script.
You have been brought back to me.
Brought back? We came of our own free will. We are not to be subjected like the Zarbis, or terrorized like the Menoptera. We are...
You are of no further use except for the way you think. I need your intelligence.
The entire story is one great idea limited by 1960s low-budget television, but the story is so different and radical to most of the series that it's a difficult one to quite appreciate. I love that they tried something different, and the episode's failures are the best kind of failures. The story failed because it was too ambitious and it was too weird. Yet Doctor Who is great because it is ambitious and weird, and why I love Doctor Who is encapsulated by the spirit of the web planet. And yes, it is flawed, it's too slow paced, and its plot is scrappy and messy despite its simplicity, and of course the visuals don't hold up. But Doctor Who fans shouldn't give a shit about crappy visuals when the story is this imaginative, unique, weird, interesting, and quintessentially Doctor Who, despite being so at odds with most episodes of the show. Doctor Who is a long-running show, so naturally there's a lot of difference of opinion, so please remember this has all been my opinion. There's definitely people out there who love episodes I hate, like Love and Monsters or Time and the Rani. I'm also aware that these opinions might change. I'm recording this in September 2016 and look forward to rewatching other stories and finding they too are underrated. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about what you thought of my list, and also what other stories you think are really underrated. I'd love to hear other suggestions for other video essays and lists I can do in the future. If you want to know what I'm doing at the moment, you can follow me on Twitter, and if you want to know what movies I'm watching, you can follow me on Letterboxd. I'll put links in the description. Thank you once again for watching and listening to me say my very weird opinions.